There's a pasuk that King David said in the 90th chapter, the 4th pasuk. He says, "Ki elef shanim be'enecha, ki kayom etmol ki yavor ve'ashmura balayla." That for God, 1,000 years is like one day, or the night, and then 1,000 years is the day. The Kuzari was written 1,000 years ago, at the same time as another book called Moreh Nevuchim that the Rambam wrote. And we know there's a saying that before it becomes day, it's always the darkest time of the night. The most difficult and horrible time of the Jewish people was 1,000 years ago. And therefore, during this time of suffering and difficulty, God gave us a beam of light, a ray of light. And we were given two books. One was called Inreach and one was called Outreach.
I just wanted to see what
the Inreach book,
the translators were translating.
the Inreach book was the Kuzari, and the Outreach book was the Rambam's Moreh Nevuchim. They basically took the secrets of the Zohar, the secrets of the Torah, they put it into a book. They gave us what we need to know in a language that we can understand. And these books have basically given us the ability to make it through the exile, to make it through the challenges over the last 1,000 years. And it's still so relevant to our life today. So you could say the difference between the Kuzari and the Moreh Nevuchim is that the Rambam speaks more to the intellect and the Kuzari speaks more to the emotion. Even though they both explain things in a very intellectual way, but what is the angle? We see the book of Kuzari starts off with a dream. A dream is something it's not so, intellectual. You have a dream, so it's a dream. What's a dream? It could be just your imagination. But the dream is like, it says that a 60th of prophecy is a dream. And in the last generations, we see these two styles of the Gaon of Vilna. You had the Hasidim were more talking to the emotion, and the Rambam and the Mitnagdim were talking more to the Torah and the intellect. And anyway, so that I just wanted to give a little introduction about this book we have. And we are at the conversation of the philosopher. And it's unbelievable how relevant it is, this philosophy, to our way of life. And thank God I just got a new book that's of Rav Yosef Kalner, a perush on the Kuzari. It's very hard to understand the language of the Kuzari, and he did an amazing job. Not that I'm anybody to give him, recommendations, but for me, I'm able to. He translated the language to a very more understandable language. And let's jump into the philosophy. So we started already, but I'm going to do a quick relapse for whoever wasn't here, or just to remember what we spoke about. So we said that the king has a dream. In the dream, the angel comes to him and says, your intentions are wanted, which is, he was sacrificing all these sacrifices to try to serve God, but your actions are not wanted. Go find out what are the actions that are wanted. And this is really the desire of everyone in the world, is searching for what is the right action. Like what does God want from me? It's a deep question. So he calls a philosopher. He calls, he goes through this process where he speaks to a philosopher, and then he speaks to a Muslim, then he speaks to a Christian, then he finds a Jew, and then the whole book is basically a discussion with the Jew. Now, obviously, this is not a deep philosophical going in depth to philosophy. It's a little, a taster on what is philosophy. It's a little message. It's like a summary, a short summary of what is philosophy all about. And like we said, this summary is still relevant to today, more than ever. It's incredible. So, and by the way, and this whole story is based on this king that 400 years prior to this story, when the Rabbi Levi wrote this book, this happened 400 years prior, but we don't even know if it really happened. There's questions. It could have not, but that's not relevant. The rabbi here is writing the questions. He's the philosopher. He's the rabbi. He's writing. He's the discussion. He's bringing what he wants to bring from philosophy, from Christianity, from Islam, and then to Judaism. So it's a nice way to keep it exciting by this discussion, a question and answer. It's it's called poetic license. You can, okay, so it doesn't have to be exactly how it happened and act so conversation. So the philosopher starts off like this. So you tell me you had a dream about that God wants, that he does not, your intentions are wanted, but your actions are not wanted. In other words, there's actions that God wants. God understands your intentions. The philosopher starts off saying, let me make it very clear. En la Elohim, ואמר לו הפילוסוף, אין לאלוהים לא רצון ולא שנאה. God does not want anything. Okay? And ולא שנאה, God doesn't love you, God doesn't hate you. כי הוא נעלם מכל החפצים, מכל התכליות. Because he's above wanting or needing anything. Why? כי תכלית מורה על חיסרון המכוון, וכי השלמת כוונתו שלמות לו, בעוד שלא תשלם הוא חסר. If I want something, if I say that God wants something, it means he's lacking something. Right? So you can't say that God wants something. Right? If I want something, I don't get it, so now I'm not complete. I got it, now I have it. Now I'm complete. And God is complete. Okay? But the only problem with this theory is, what do you mean? A lot of times I want something for you because I know it's good for you, and it doesn't do anything for me. I want to give you something. I want you to have something. If you don't have it, am I lacking something? No. Basically, the philosopher is somebody that he does what's called, what's it called when you, I project. Philosopher thinks, okay, wait, I am so above everybody and everything, and I'm so amazing, and I'm so smart, and I'm so great, and everyone else are worthless lowlifes that are just, have no purpose of even existing. So I need to communicate with people like that. Obviously, God is like me. He's also so smart and so great, and he doesn't have any connection with the lowlifes like us. Basically, the philosopher is someone who is full of pride. I'm so great, I'm so big, I'm so smart, everyone else is worthless, not even worth my how do you say, hityachasut, what's the word? My
effort, time of day.
Hityachasut. My relating to them, even like to relate to them.
Empathy.
Any connection even. Okay? Why? כי כן הוא נעלה לדעת הפילוסופים מידת פרטים. God is above knowing the details. And we spoke last week. Right? In other words, why is God above knowing the details? כי מפני שמשתנים עם הזמן ובדיעתו שלו אם אין שינוי. It's changing all the time. So if God doesn't know what's going to happen, or if God knows the details, it means he's always changing. But God can't ever change because God is perfect. God is above everything. So basically, therefore, God does not know anything of the details. He doesn't want anything. He doesn't care about anything. Because God is perfect. God is so high. And by the way, we mentioned in the Torah says, Kol makom shata motze gdulato ata motze anvatanuto. Any place in the Torah where God speaks about Ki Hashem Elohim v'Adonai Adonim, when it talks about God is so great and so above everything, it brings, and he takes care, doeg, leyatom, ve'almana, the same places where it mentions this God being so great and so above everything, in the Torah, in the Nevi'im, in the Ketuvim, every place it mentions God being so great and above everything, at the same time it brings the actual details, how God sees the details, God is involved and sees, understands everything, sees everything, and is involved in everything. Okay? כמו כן, אינו יודע אותך. So obviously, you think that God, if God doesn't know the details, so obviously he doesn't know you. And he doesn't know your v'lo yida kavanotecha. He doesn't know your intentions. Like in the dream, that the angel says, God knows your intentions. He doesn't know but he doesn't want your actions. He doesn't know your intentions, says the philosopher. And by the way, these are thoughts that we're having all the time. I have these thoughts saying, God doesn't see me, especially when we're going through hard times. God doesn't see me. God doesn't love me. Everything is just random. And this is a philosophy. It takes these ideas, these negative thoughts that we have that come into us sometimes, and makes a whole way of life based on this philosophy. So God doesn't see you, He doesn't know you, He doesn't know your intentions, and obviously, Shelo Yishma Tfilotecha, and God doesn't hear your prayers. V'lo yireh et tnutecha, and He doesn't see your movements. The Shulchan Aruch starts off, the first words of the Shulchan Aruch, when you open up the Shulchan Aruch, it says, Shiviti Hashem lenegdi tamid. Ki en yeshivato shel adam utnuatav ketnuatav kshu omed lifnei melech gadol v'nora. You should be here. God doesn't hear your prayers. God doesn't see your movements. You should imagine God is watching you all the time, that He's seeing you, and that He hears your prayers. And this is like the opposite. This is like 180 degrees of the opposite. And unfortunately, this is very common today. And what does it mean? What is it that we know the philosophers say that God created you? What do they mean? What do they mean when they say God created you? When we say God created you, we mean there was nothing and He created something. We say God created the world. There was nothing and now there was something. Right? But when they say, don't get confused as the philosopher. When I say that God created you, I'm just using this, I'm only using it as an affirmation, I'm borrowing the language. In other words, I mean to say, Hu ilat hailot, God always was, bebriat kol nivra, lo mipnei shehu bechavana mimeno. So when I say that God is the creator, what I mean to say was God always existed and nature always existed. There was always God, who's above everything and beyond everything. And there was always creation. Everything is evolving. Everything was created. There was always atoms. We're going to go into it in depth, but everything was always there. So I just mean to say that God is always there, and same way the world was always there. God did not create man. If God didn't create you, and there's no freedom of choice, and there's no creation, God doesn't want anything. Wow. God always was, the world always was, and God didn't create anything. That's the way the philosophers see it. Everything just was always. A person was created from all kinds of, there was atoms, and the atoms evolved, and they evolved, and there was always there was chromosomes, and from your parents, and then from depending on you became who you are, based on the air and the food you eat and the parents, and everything is just a natural course of events. And it's like there's this these, like, how do you say, the watch, there's like these what are they called,
Gears.
What are they called?
Cogs or gears.
Cogs, or they're like these the circles with the little
Gears,
right? So one gear starts turning, it turns another one. So everything there's a cause and effect, and everything causes everything to move. But, and like you said, there's laws of genetics and weather and physics and chemistry, and everything affects who you are. There's also all kinds of stars that have an effect on you, right? Astronomy, things like that. And everything started, all of this complex system of natural courses of events. This is the way the world you see it. And all started from the first reason. In other words, that first beginning atom or cells or whatever you want to call it. And that's always, everything always was. Very nice. No God involved. Lo bigal kavanata ela kashefa, not because of intention, but as a flow of things that just continuously cause and effect that created the world that we're in today. Okay, one like siva rishona, one like first thing, this related to the second thing, and that goes on and on. An incredible natural force system, and just keeps going. Okay, one reason brought to the next. That's it. Very simple. V'akesher b'neim kadmon kishem shehasiba rishona kadmonit. And the connection between them, God and the world, we're always there the same way, it always was. And en la reshit, there's no beginning. There's no beginning. Same way God always was, that's the way the world and man always were, and it's always was, and that's it. Everything is a natural system. Everything is mechanical. It's like the reality is a machine. And therefore, another understanding, a person that was created lacking, like he calls a black person. This is what, unfortunately, racism. They were very racist, these philosophers. And they say, like the black person and the philosopher was perfect. So God created this, not God, sorry. Nature or the reality created these perfect creations that are called philosophers. And then he created other creations that are not perfect and can never become perfect, and those are the black people. And they just are what they are. One is perfect, the other one is not perfect and can never be perfect. For example, it's like you have a bicycle or you have an airplane. An airplane you can turn on, you can put gas, you can fly with. A bicycle, no matter how you try, it will never become anything else. So that's where we have this caste system and this whole understanding of, this was unfortunately for many years, the idea of slavery and the outlook on blacks. But even when we're talking about philosopher, it doesn't mean that he is now this perfect creation. He has to bring out his potential. How will he bring out his potential? He needs to learn. He needs to, if you're talented in music, you need to learn music. You still need to advance. But if you don't have a musical ear, if you don't have a musical talent, it's not going to help you to ever learn or do anything. And therefore, the philosopher has to constantly be learning and growing. The word philosophy means, philo is wisdom, philosophy. Sophia is loving wisdom. So you have to just love wisdom. It's all about this idea. Adam Shalem a person needs to davek b'mina Elohi, or Elohi nikra or sechel. There's this wisdom in the world. There's this knowledge. Just tap into this, the laws of nature, the science, right? All these things are there today, and we need to tap into that. We need to advance ourselves based on knowledge, on science, on all these things, and then we become this advanced level of creation. We call it sechel hapoel. When you tap into this wisdom that's in the world, this consciousness, and we understand the outcomes of everything. We call logics, right? Logic. And linguistics, and the root of knowledge and thought. Okay? And you have to understand something. So you have on one extreme, you had idol worshipping. What is idol worshipping? There is no intellect, there's no brain, you let your emotions lead the way. And that led to murder and violence and all kinds of terrible idol worshipping behaviors. On the other extreme, 180 degrees to the other side, you had philosophers, which is all sechel, it's all intellect. It's all your ability. It's as if like you landed in this world and you have to figure everything out on your own. You create the test. You're the tester. You are you take the test and you grade yourself. You make everything. You decide everything on your own. Everything is in your power and your choice. That's completely the other side. It was good on one hand because it fought idol worshipping. But it was negative on the other side because it created Again, what's the Jewish way? The middle path. There is an intellect, and it's very important. But there's above that Amunah. When the Rambam talks about that first, I mentioned that when you open up the Shulchan Aruch, it starts off saying that the first thing you have to know, Shiviti Hashem enegdi tamid. The Shulchan Aruch starts off, place Hashem before you. Because the way you move, the way you talk, when you understand that Hashem is looking down, watching you, you'll be a different person. Just understanding that God is watching you and God sees you. The word tzitzit comes from the word latzitz, to peek. God is peeking through. He's watching. He's concerned. He cares about you. It's like a child learning to walk. If you hold him all the time, he'll never learn to walk. If you leave him alone, he'll never learn to walk. So it's this fine balance of touching and not touching, holding and letting go. God, that's how He is in the world. We don't see Him, but He's there. He's guiding. He's behind the scenes. He's peeking in. There's one time where He jumped in and took over. That was in Pesach, and that made us understand forever that God is always there, involved, cares, and watching. One time He jumped in. We were going to fall, whatever. We're going to fall 49 levels of Tumah, and He jumped in and grabbed us. But most of the time, He wants us to make it on our own. But He's watching and He cares. So, here we are. Let's keep going. So we said, Hu hasechel hapoel ein benehem hevdel. And this person that can reach this high level of potential of intellectual advancement, with your understanding, with your thought, you can actually create realities. This is very powerful. Thoughts are very, very powerful. The thoughts, the understanding, the knowledge. V'yashuv kelav. When I say yashuv kelav, רצינו לומר איבריו. ולא יעסקו אלה במעשים השלמים ביותר, זמנים הנכונים ביותר, מסיבות טובות יותר, כאילו הם כלים שכל הפועל. A person who has reached the level of incredible knowledge, who does everything out of thought and everything out of contemplation and understanding. This person, his senses, his physical senses, his everything, his behaviors, everything will be different. Again, you have to understand, it's not all bad in philosophy. There's a lot of good. The Rambam sifted out the good from the bad, but there's a lot of good. And even says in the Zohar that a lot of the pathways of the Greek philosophies and philosophers were close to the Krovim Shmilei Emunah, were close to the pathway of faith. And that's why it was so difficult for many Jews, got sucked in, because it was so confusing, because it was very deep. Obviously what we're learning here is just like a taster, and we're just like, grabbing on one or two things, but it's a whole entire world of depth of philosophy. Okay? In other words, he says that most people, they have what's called this, we call it sechel hayuli. The yuli, I don't know how it's translated. If you have English, it's helpful. But this this brain that's called yuli, in other words, it's a brain that is not, that's basically activated. In other words, I could press your button and you'll start screaming. I know what you will act. I will predict your actions based on, because that's a person that hasn't developed his brain, his intellect. Is a person that basically I can tell him what, with advertisements or with all kinds of ways. I can tell him what I want him to do. I can move him to where I want him to move. That's a person who has this kind of sechel. But we are not like that. He's saying you have to work really hard. You have to work hard and developing your intellect. And you're able to learn. And you're able to grow. And these are all wonderful things. So he says, this person, the philosopher, reaches a place where he's always right. He's always on the target. He always thinks the correct thoughts. He doesn't make mistakes. He knows everything, what is the truth, what's the pleasant thing, and what's nice thing, and what makes sense, and what's true. There's no mistakes. Okay? This is like, in other words, a person has, imagine what he's talking about here, it's as if you have another brain that's outside of you, that watches what you're doing. that basically directs you to the right direction to make sure you're going in the right path. Right? That's incredible. Imagine it's like, in the movies you had the cricket or whatever it was. If something watching you, and that's this unbelievable level of knowledge. It's outside of you and it tells you what to do and keep growing and keep developing, and it's like you have this ability to become this very high level, and he calls that the godly light. Ha'or ha'elohi. Right? Okay? And this level, מדרגה הזאת, השיא מה שהאדם השלם מקווה להגיע. This is the pinnacle, this is the goal, this is the highest potential and the highest thing that you should strive for, is to reach this level of connecting to what we call the sechel, הדבקות בשכל הפועל. Right? This is the ideal. How do you get to that? How do you get to that intellect that you become so advanced intellectually, that you're so smart and you're so like above the, you could say, the emotional or primitive instinctual desires? How do you get to that? אחרי שנפשו תיטל מן הספקות, תבין את החוכמות על אמיתתם ותעשה כמלאך, and you will become like an angel. The same way, once you have no doubts anymore, and you know what's right, and you know what the right thing, and you do everything according to your intellect, you will become, through wisdom, you will become like an angel. The same way the angels are all, this is what they understood angels. Angels are brains without a body. How could a person reach this level? He says you can get it by sechel hapoel. When you advance your intellect to such a high level, then you no longer are your body. Your body isn't what your instincts or your lower desires are not what guide you, because you become like an angel. It's very interesting. Okay, this is not just, when they talk about sechel, intellect, they're not just talking about intellectual, right? They're not just talking about like this ability to solve problems, mathematical problems, or play chess, right? They're talking about something very rich and deep, and it's basically close to what we call consciousness. Like your consciousness becomes so advanced. Okay? And that's what they're talking about. And he madriga sechel poel, and this is basically like an angel. And then once you reach this place, when you become like an angel, like an intellect detached from the materialistic world, you become shalem asechel poel hofchim liot davar echad. You tapped into this the wisdom of the world, and you can affect the world based on your knowledge and your thoughts, and you become, and your body, you won't be worried about dying anymore. You don't need the body anymore. This is pretty deep stuff. You become so advanced, and your thoughts continue forever, and you've tapped into the thoughts of the world. The same way these are angels that are above the sun or above the world, like the wisdom of the sun or the wisdom. You became that, and then when you die, so they basically, like the fear of death is something that's always hovering above everybody, and Rav Kook says all of the hard work that people do is to try to run away from it or not think about it. Here they're thinking about it. They're asking the questions: why we exist, what's the purpose of existence, what is the purpose of man, and they came up with a theory, and this is the theory, and it helped them to not be. They're not afraid of dying. The philosophers used to say, what's the big deal? Dying is like taking your jacket, hanging it up on the coat rack, and you walked out. So the body goes, and you keep going. So they believed in a certain the intellect continues. They didn't call it a soul, and then you become one, like Ecclesiastes and Socrates and Plato and Aristotle, and anyone who could reach their level. This is the goal. This is what you should be working for. This is what the purpose is of life. By the way, just we're mentioning Plato. an incredible philosopher. So Plato thinks, okay, everything we're talking about here is about the individual, but this king is running he's running a country. What do you have to say to the nation? How do you run a state? Oh, so comes up Plato, who's a genius and an incredible mind. He came up with the theory. Here it is. Who is the ideal person when it comes to a state? A soldier. Because a soldier, he goes to fight, he gives his life for the nation. That's the greatest creation of a state. Who is the enemy, or what is the enemy of a state? Family. Because I want a family and I want to give to my family, I don't want to give my life and go to war. It's also the Rambam says, when you go to war, you have to forget about your family, forget about your wife, forget about your children. You have to erase them from your mind. Because you're now...
The Rambam said this?
Straight out in the Rambam. That it says that when... I'll show it to you after if you want to see. The Rambam writes... No, I'll show you it inside. He says that when a person goes to war, he has to forget about his wife, forget about his children, and not be afraid and to die. Halacha. The Rambam, straight out. I'll show you after.
You can't be distracted.
So you can't be distracted, and you have to. So we see the enemy. So who is the enemy of the nation? Is families. So who is the enemy of nation? The families. So what do? Here we go. I figured it out. Says the Plato. Very smart. All doctors will live together. To be a doctor, you need to have the right wife for it. It's very idealistic. It's very not simple. All doctors will live together. All wives of doctors will belong to all the doctors. And all the children will not know who their father is. So then there's no family. No child. There'll be like these communes. Think about it. The doctors will be together. All day they'll be talking about the new developments in medical. And they have the wife who knows how to be the perfect wife of a doctor. She knows exactly. She's also interested in it. She's also, she knows she can give him exactly what he needs. This is what this incredible philosopher came up with. That's why we say, "Chochma b'goyim tamid," wisdom in the non-Jews, in the non-Jewish world, you can take in. Like Yitro taught us the whole system of hierarchies and how to do the law based on different judges. But emunah al tamid. Here it's like Esav. His head we took into, he's buried in Merat Machpelah. But the body, when it comes to how to run the world, unbelievable. This is his theory. Plato. So then, therefore, as we said, when we said, and this is what we call, again, borrowing the word, Ratzon Elohim. When we say the will of God, this is obviously, we don't mean that God doesn't want anything, God has no will, but therefore, go after this idea, advance your intellect, learn science, learn the sciences, you'll be filled with consciousness of life, and this is what the purpose of everything. And now he goes on, here's another idea. Now, also, it's a good idea to have good behavior. Why? Right? Also connect with midot and maasim, good character. The middle pathway the Rambam talks about, the philosophers expanded on this idea of the middle path. Don't be angry, don't be too sad, everything, take the middle path. Great ideas on how to also be balanced in life. Why? You also, and be humble. Why? Not because it's important or it's of value. Because it's not going to help you learn. Eat too much, you won't be able to learn. If you eat too much, you'll be tired. So eat enough that you need, because you need to learn. The goal is learning and advancing your knowledge, and therefore, go act in a good way, just for the sake of being able to learn, knowing the truth, right? Act in a good way, honest way. All these things are very good. Not because, there's any value of it, but just because it will help you to learn. You should learn to be happy with what you have. Don't be a person who's running after, always trying to get more money, more things. Be humble. Anava. It's very good to be humble. It helps you to learn from everything around you. And always give respect to God. Because God is like, even though he doesn't care about what happens in this world, and he's not involved, he doesn't see anything, he doesn't hear your prayers, but he's like, it's like you have a building, he's like the Nasi Kavod. How do you say that? The honorary president of the world. His name's on the building, but he has nothing to do with it, and he doesn't care about the institution, and he's not involved, and he gave a lot of money, or he was there, he was always around, so you give him a respect that we put his name on the building. But right, don't think that you have to behave nicely or act in a good way, not so God won't be angry or that God will be happy that you did good. No. These don't exist. It's just that your brain should become this, like we said, the intellect that is active, and tap into this wisdom of the world and think about the reality in the right way. This is what is it. Kasher tiyeh b'tchunat emunah zot. Lo yishaneh lecha ezeh Torah shtekabel. And when you reach this place of this knowledge, you know what? You can invent any religion you want. Religion is just, it's like you have some kind of need to you want to make up a religion, make it up. But the king says, what do you mean? I made up a religion. I was just sacrificing. And the angel told me no, that it's not the right thing. No, we're not there yet. It doesn't make a difference what you believe. It doesn't make a difference which Torah you accept. You can invent your own religion. Because you are the center of everything. You decide everything. It's all about what you think. It's all about, how does it say? How does it go? Nothing makes it wrong or right, but what's the word? But thinking makes it that way. Something like that. Whatever you believe, right? In other words,
I think therefore I am.
I think therefore I am, or nothing is wrong or right. Just think. I have to remember what there's a saying like that. Nothing is wrong or right unless whatever thinking you think it is makes it wrong or right. Like today, that what we call postmodernism is that you decide the criteria, and this is exactly so relevant today. There's no wrong or right. There's no truth or a lie. There's no truth. Ish be'emunato yichyeh. Everybody can invent their own religion. That's what he says here. Make up your own religion. It's like in the 12-step program. The 12-step program says you have to believe in some higher power. You can't make it through this system unless you believe in some kind of higher power. So make up some higher power. What? That's what it says. There's a 12-step program for people that are addicted to drugs or whatever, or alcohol, and it says you have to one of the 12 steps is you have to believe in some higher power. It helps you to think that there's some higher power that is thinking of you but watches you. It doesn't exist. It's not true, but invent it.
God.
Exactly. Make up a God. It doesn't exist, but make it
the real one. Just take the real one.
No, but don't think that it's real. It's not real. But make it up. You're real. You decide everything. Bottom line is, klalo shel davar. Let's put it. Let me bring it down to you. Bakesh barle be'ez elfen shitechen acharei asher tavin chachmot amitatam atagim b'kashcha tzelamat v'kut b'rachani. So basically, your dream never happened. It's all again, when we just focus on your intellectual knowledge. This is way above what we call academic intellectualism. This is like wisdom of life, uplifting of the spirit. It's a purifying your nefesh. Okay, and that's it. It's all about your sechel. And so here in this book of Rav Conner, he brings a whole list of questions on the philosopher of like how it just doesn't make sense, everything he's saying. We're not going to go into that. We don't have time. I want to finish the philosopher, and next week start with the Muslim. Next week start with the Muslim, because we're done. So basically, I just want to say here so we're number 2. After this whole great lecture, the king says, Amar Kuzari, sorry, Achen dvarecha maspikim, I heard enough. I asked you about your faith, you gave it to me, you answered very nicely. The fact is, I don't see that your way of life makes people happy. I don't see that it runs the country well. I don't see that it's very advanced. It's very I don't see that you're living the model of the perfect human being. I don't see people happy. I don't see people living in a good way. I don't see this way of life of being actually a good pathway. I don't know how to run a country with your with your with your philosophies. You answer very nice, and you have a system, and it includes everything. Like you have a whole way of life on everything, on how to behave and how to think, and everything is very nice. But it doesn't answer my question. My soul is screaming out. I had a dream, and I know that dream was real. And I'm in a completely different place than you. I know that dream was real, and I understand that we're completely different people. Maybe it does it for you. You're living in your brain, but that doesn't do it for me. And right, I know that I know that my intentions are pure. God, the angel told me your intentions are pure. I know that I'm onto something. I know I'm in the right direction. Because the angel told me your intentions are pure. And I know, and I see religions that are passionate and fighting one another, that they believe in this truth. There's something that you are missing, and that doesn't work for me. If it was like this idea of like whatever you think is right, and whatever religion you invent is work, so I tried that. It doesn't work. I'm not happy, and it doesn't work. And I'm hearing my soul crying out, and I know that I'm pure. I know that what I want, and I know that message that was given to me, the Masai mechuvanim, and that my actions are not wanted. My intentions are that I'm onto a right path. That was the answer I got. I believe in that, and therefore I do believe there is such a thing as an action that is wanted by God, and I'm going to keep searching until I find it. And it's not just all in your head. It's not just all, if you think it's right. I don't agree with that philosophy, and therefore I'm not stopping there, and therefore I'm going to go and look and see we'll start with the Muslim, what he has to say. I see the Muslims and the Christians, they're fighting one another, they're passionate, and this is something else. They're in a different place than you are, and they're willing to die for it or kill for it. So obviously this is not just it's not all in your head. This is like the way they're living lives, and I want to go find out what this whole story is. That if someone is willing to go die for his belief, it must be something deep. And you're talking about huge amounts of people. I want to go look into it and find out what it's about, and that's where he moves forward. Thank you very much. I didn't think we'd actually make it through the whole philosopher, but we did.